So here's my video blog from my visit to Mount Airy on September the 21st, 2017. I wanted to try a new format, so I created a stat sheet where I can input all the roles and then have the sheet spit out some of the stats. If you'd like to see this sheet with all the built-in formulas and macros to calculate and produce the stats I have here, you can visit my site at www.dicecounting.com. It's super helpful and it really gives you a great outlook on what you've just experienced at the craps table. So here's what happened. I started early at around 5:30 a.m. I like this time because there's a better chance there'll be just a couple of players and a more steady, predictable output of patterns. When there's more players, there tends to be more variance in patterns, and I don't get as many rolls because of all the action. On this morning, there were 5 players, and without being too annoying, I tend to ask a couple of questions, such as, did I miss a hot roll, or has it been pretty slow for the last hour? And here you can see that I noted that there were 5 players, and a player actually said that I missed the biggest roll. So that kind of told me a lot right there. I began tracking, and within this series, I noticed some 3 and 2 win series, and there was also a 7-win series. And then going further down, here's another 3-win series and 2. So at this point, I'm noticing a trend. And the trend is 3, 3, 2, 3. There's a 7, but there's another 3 and a 2. I'm going to make a decision to place a bet or lay against whenever I see 2 wins, because I'm trying to capitalize on the fact that it's going to top out at 3 or 2. I think it was around this point was when I decided to, try to capitalize on the fact that they were trending at 2 and 3. So let's just look at this roll right here. This 2 represents, here's win number 1. And then from that 8 to that 8 was win number 2, right? So at this point, I'm saying that when the come out point, which is a 10, when that comes out, I'm probably going to lay against a 10 because I'm just going on what's been trending. And what's been trending is a series of 3 and 2 wins. So far we have 2 wins. And if by chance this 10 was to result in a win, then I'll just double up once and I'll lay against it again. But this time around, the 10 did not come out again. So I won on this 2-win series. Now, at times, I just never know when or how long this trend is going to, persist. So that's where you're gambling. And I think I continued on that trend. I won here. I won there. And I lost here because it went to 4 wins. So I would say that this is probably where that trend, where it ended right here. And from that point, I'm just waiting to collect more data, more rolls, so that I can kind of get a wider scope of what else is trending. So let's zoom out. This was a pretty hot roll, especially since there were 7 10s rolled. So as you can probably guess, I laid against a 10 after it was rolled 7 times, knowing that it might just top out at 8, and I won. On this long roll, I'm also paying attention to where certain numbers peak at, because this might be useful later. I'm looking at about 20 different things, 20 different types of patterns. I'm looking at hot rolls. I'm looking at short rolls. And what I determine as a short roll is 4 or less. So if it's 4 or less, then chances are I'm going to label it as this, a square with the number of short rolls right here. And if it's 5 or greater, I'm going to label it as a triangle. So this was 3 consecutive rows of 5 or more numbers. So I labeled that right here with 3. And what I'm noticing is that another trend is it's going 3 here, then 3 here. Here's another 3. This one is 2. Here's 2, 2 short rolls, 2 short rolls, 3 short rolls, 2 long rolls. So you're asking, well, how would I take advantage of this? Well, if you're taking advantage of the fact that short rolls are only topping out at, say, 3 or 2, like this one topped out at 3, then what you would probably do is, what I normally do is just, I do inside bets, 22 for all the inside numbers. And I only let it ride for about 4 rolls, just in case it sevens out on the 5th roll. After 3 consecutive short output rolls, like here, on the come out roll, I would place the inside. 22 inside is what I'll tell them. And for just these 4 rolls, I would place bets on the inside numbers, 5, 6, 8, and 9. And here it paid off because 3 6s came out. And I would let it ride just for 3 rolls. So on the first 6, win $7. I parlayed that bet. The next time I won $14, and then so on and so forth. And then after the 4th roll, I would just take all my bets off. Now there's sometimes that doesn't work, and it's not an exact science. I look for these biggies. Like here is 8 wins. Now after 8 wins, let me zoom in. There tends to be kind of a cool off that will happen right around this area down here. And as you notice, within this row of numbers, there was an 8-win series, there's a 6-win series. And if you don't know where those are, let me illuminate that for you. I'm kind of working backwards. So here is a 6-win series. From this 6 right here to this 6 is your first win. Here's your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then the 6th right here. All right, so that I counted while I was tracking rolls, and here it is. Now the 8-win series, that started 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So this is where the 8-win series happened, right here. And that's why I label that right here. Now here's what I've learned to sort of expect after an 8-win series, because this is kind of like your boiling point on this hot roll right here. You had a 15 roll series, and then you had a 20 roll series, and I think by all definitions that's a hot roll. And then when it cooled off, I sort of knew that around this section right here, you were going to have shorter win series, between 2 and 5. So what I would do is I'll wait till 2 wins, such as right here, and then I'll lay against it, having the expectation that it's not going to be huge due to the fact that you had kind of an eruption over here. So these couple of times I actually won with that because I laid against after 2 wins. Now after that, I wouldn't take any chances beyond this little pocket right here, because I've seen many times before where after this short spurt here, you would have another explosion of 8, 9 wins right in this section. So I'm also looking at how other numbers are trending, their peak output. If you were to look at this column here, the very last one, where it's 0, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 3, 2, that's the output of 8s for every row. And what I'm noticing here is, here's 2, here's 3, here's 2, here's 3, here's 3. So if you're thinking like I do, you're noticing that, well, maybe I can lay against the 8 after it comes out 2 or 3 times. It's not the safest thing to do because there are times where you will explode with 6s or 8s. That happens. But when we're looking at this entire sheet, this sheet represents about an hour and a half of rolls. So in an hour and a half, you can make certain assumptions about the output of certain numbers just based on what you've seen already. Now, let's go into future rolls. This is already 3 hours of rolls, and in 3 hours, that 8, it never peaked above 3. Peaked out at 3 here. It's at 2. Let's zoom in a little bit. 2 again. And yeah, as you can see, it's 3s and 2s. This has been happening for 3 hours now. And I can tell you that anyone who is not recording dice rolls like I am, they have no idea that this is happening. That every single time the 8s are peaking out at 3 and 2. The 6s is doing something slightly different. Like it peaked out at 4 here. Once it went all the way to 7 on this roll. Now let's look into page 3. Here's what's going on with the 8. It's not going above 3. Let's see how long it takes before it actually passes the threshold. And this third page represents hour number 3, 4.5. So 4.5 hours, and not once has the 8 gone above 3. And now we're going to page 4. Now we're into hour number 6. And finally, we have an explosion of 8s. After about 6 hours of just a low output, we finally have 7. I want to make something known here. The thing that was different about this roll, this massive output of rolls, 33 to be exact, was a new shooter. The only person to change the output of rolls to have the highest roll was a brand new shooter. And when I mean brand new shooter, this was her first time playing craps, and she rolled 33 times and broke the trend of 8s, topping out at 3. When her father, who was with her, mentioned that, this is her first time playing, and he, you can almost tell by the way he was directing her and how to throw the dice and everything. Guess what I did? 22 inside. I want everything working, and I want to press those bets every single time. So this turned out to be a pretty good roll for me because I knew that the energy had changed just by her rolling. Right after she was done, the 8s are now topping out at 4. And here it went to 4. All right, let's see what happens at the last page. We're still at 3, but now it's going about a notch. It's going about a notch higher at 4 now. You can imagine after the 9th hour, and I was just exhausted. I was mentally exhausted. And what happens when you get that way is that you start missing things. You start missing patterns. You're mentally fatigued, and this is what happens. So I'm going to fill in the blanks here right now. So this is what I would do in this situation because we have 2 rows of 4 or less. And then I would just label it as such. Do a little box just like that. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And that's the end. So you just got an example of how I would fill in the gaps. Oh, let me show you how I also track wins. Be okay with the fact that you're not a robot to track so many things at the same time, and you just have to get it in wherever you can, after the rolls or even further down, and just go back and track everything. All right, so let's start doing the wins and losses. Starting from here, any one of these three numbers can be considered a loss, because if you did a combat here, you would have lost. If you did a combat here, you would have lost. If you did a combat on a 10, you would have lost, because you needed these numbers to repeat themselves. The only winning combat would have been right before on the 6, because this 6 came out twice. But in essence, you have 1, 2, 3. You have 4 losing bets, because a 7 came out before the 9, the 8, this 6, and that 10. Now what I do is I clump them all together, and I just consider that all one loss. And from this 10, it wasn't repeated again, so that's loss number 2. From this 8, wasn't repeated, that's loss number 3. And then this 9 repeated again. So from here to here, we have a loss series of 3. So that's how I label that. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3. Now here's actually a 2-loss series, and this 3 and that 3 were 2 consecutive losses, because we're thinking in terms of if you were to place a combat or a don't combat at this very point right here. 1, 2, and the reason why it's just a 2-loss series is because the 6 was coupled with another 6. That's a 2-loss series, and what I would have done is I would have labeled it right here. In case you were curious to know what would have been the best style of play while you were tracking wins and losses, here's a chart that shows you the results of all the wins and all the losses throughout the rolls. And by the looks of things, either playing only once after one loss, by playing either the pass line or the combat once, might have been a good move, or playing after 3 losses, the pass line or a combat after 3 losses, and if that lost, then you would double up once between the 3rd and 4th loss. That might have been a profitable style of play as well. So I'd like to spend some time talking about cycles. Cycles in relation to dice counting are patterns that show up at different time intervals. Some patterns repeat while the same shooter is rolling the dice, and then others happen a couple of shooters later, and I've even seen some patterns repeat themselves 8 hours later. To help you understand what I'm talking about, I'm gonna deviate from the information in this video and look at roll data from another date. I'll be specifically looking at data from the frequency columns. Here's a quick illustration. Column 1 is 4s, column 2 are 10s, column 3 is 5s. Column 4 represents total 9s along the row. Column 5 represents the 6s. And the last column represents 8s. Okay, so here's the total data from November the 10th, 2017. Each slide here represents approximately 45 minutes of roll data. It starts on the upper left corner and ends on the bottom right. This is about 6 or 7 straight hours of gameplay without a break. The first cycle I like to point out is outlined in red. This first occurrence resulted in 4s rolling 9 times within 3 rows. The next occurrence resulted in 10s rolling 9 times but within 8 rows of data. They aren't exactly the same, but the cycle took approximately 2 hours to loosely repeat itself. Another pattern outlined in green was 6 consecutive rows of our target number. Our target number in this case was the 4, and about an hour and a half later, the same pattern of 6 consecutive rows of 4s happened again. All right, so let's test your pattern finding skills. I'm going to give you a few seconds to look at the first 2 columns of each strip and identify a prevailing pattern. Okay, time's up. Now here's what I saw. Every time 2 4s or 2 10s rolled throughout a series, what followed was a 0, 1, or 2 count. All right, let's try it again for the 5s and 9s columns. That is column 3 and 4 for every strip. What do you see? Okay, here's what I saw. 3s everywhere. Only 4 times did the 5 or 9 roll more than 3 times within a series of rolls. Now, there are many other patterns if you look closely, and when you're including all of the patterns that I normally look for, all these numbers light up and the game of craps becomes just so much more colorful. So to recap this entire video and help you remember what to look for when you're tracking rolls, keep a lookout for win series, loss series, peak output of dice combinations, new shooter trend shifts, shooter wins and losses, consecutive high output rolls, and by that I mean multiple rows of 5 or greater rolls, consecutive low output rolls, or multiple rows of 4 or less rolls, cycles or trend intervals. And after you've mastered the mental focus and the discipline to keep up with all these things, I welcome you to visit my site and delve deeper into the world of patterns in the dice matrix. And even if the whole thing is intimidating and you're just intrigued by the method, visit anyway and subscribe. I offer instruction and made some tools available for you to easily analyze your rolls at the end of your gameplay. Please visit dicecounting.com, and you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And lastly, gamble responsibly, and always remember to have fun. Thanks for watching.